Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cooking from Quarantine. Your response to my brisket video was so lovely, and I'm so happy to get that kind of appreciation. So thank you so much for everyone who watched. If you haven't watched yet, please go watch because I make a whole brisket and it's amazing. So on today's episode, I noticed that I had a lot of groceries that were kind of starting to go bad in my house. Produce for sure, but then there was a bunch of stuff that I had sort of gone panic shopping for that I noticed I wasn't really using, like pasta and beans. And I think that's kind of a universal concern right now, which is like, what the hell am I going to do with all of this shit that I panic bought? So we have pasta and we have beans. What does that mean? That means we can make pasta fagioli, or if you're from New Jersey, pasta fagioli, or if you're Napolitan, I don't know. So because that translates to pasta and beans. So pasta fagioli is an amazing soup that's super easy to make, and it's super versatile because kind of anything you want to throw in it works. So this is not a recipe that I have like written down. This is sort of a recipe that I developed based on things I like to eat and things I have in the house. So it's a little bit idiot proof, which is awesome. And again, anything that you have tastes good in it. So start getting rid of all of the groceries that are looking a little not so hot. So there's two different ways to prepare this dish. One is vegetarian and one is with meat. Vegetarians, I'm gonna be making the meat version, so just ignore the meat part of what I'm doing. And the stock that you're going to use, instead of chicken stock like I'm using, you'll be using a vegetable stock. But other than that, the recipe is the same. The reason mine is going to be meat-based today is because I have a weird sausage. My husband every once in a while will go to the Thai grocery that's around the corner from us. I live in Elmhurst, a very heavily Thai and Hispanic neighborhood. So that means we have great grocery stores, but also to us, unusual grocery stores. And so there's lots of ingredients that I don't really know what to do with. So I have a weird sausage is one of the games that we're playing today. It came in a package. Something fell. It came in a package. Oh, you know what fell? The chili pepper that was in it. I'm going to pick that up so I don't kill my dog. So it's called Buak Ham Nam sausage with a chili pepper. It's a pork sausage, and even though it looks like it's kind of cooked, it kind of looks cooked. It says cook thoroughly. So, you know what? He brought home a sausage. He's bringing home the bacon, bringing home the sausage. So that's what we're going to use as our meat today. I'm going to cut it up really tiny. I guess I should also mention any kind of meat that you have in your house that you just sort of need to get rid of and want to use as the base of this dish is absolutely fine. If you've got leftover, classically pancetta is what you would use in this, which is those like round cuts of like thick Italian bacon. That's what pancetta is. If you have just bacon in the house, like throw that in there, turkey bacon, like knock yourself out. Whatever kind of meat you have that you need to use up is what you should use as the base to this dish. But you could use chicken, you can use like a little bit of ground beef. It's your soup, do what makes you happy. So I'm dicing up this strange little sausage that we have. And like I mentioned, there was a chili pepper in the packaging of it. So let's just keep that in mind when we go to add pepper to this dish, that we already sort of are peppering it with the sausage that we're using. So let me quickly show you how small we've chopped our sausage. Okay, we've got it kind of like diced. You want everything that you put in this soup to be the same size. In general, when you cook, you want everything to be the same size because that's how cooking works. When you make things that are the same size, they cook at the same speed, and so everything gets done together. But there's one element of the dish that I think we should really talk about. Okay, we did the sausage. Let's talk about the rest of the ingredients that we're going to be using today. The first, good olive oil. I use Olive Oil Jones products. They are not paying me yet. to say any of this. I just super love their products. This is Spanish olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, which is not something I typically use to cook with. I usually use extra virgin olive oil as a finishing oil, but this is what we have in the house, and this is very much a, everything plus the kitchen sink kind of dish. So we're using olive oil, good olive oil, your favorite olive oil. Our mirepoix. What is mirepoix? Mirepoix is a fancy word for onions, carrots, and celery. Like the French made it up. And basically, you want to dice. This is 2 carrots, 2 stalks of celery, and 1 onion, 1 Spanish onion. You want to dice them up super small because this is going to be a soup, right? So you want things that, like, when they go onto your spoon, they're going to actually taste good when you put it in your mouth, and chewing on like 1 giant piece of celery isn't fun for anybody. So with mirepoix, the idea is we're not going to be browning any of this. Mirepoix, you're just sauteing so that you bring out the sugar content of the vegetables, and so you're sweetening the vegetables, which is what makes it such a like yummy, wholesome, hearty kind of soup. So that's 2 carrots, 2 stalks of celery, 1 onion. Again, I didn't write any of this down. This is just kind of stuff that I make up as I go along. Usually for this dish, you add some kind of tomato paste or a can of diced tomatoes, stewed tomatoes, whatever you have. I didn't have a can of diced or stewed tomatoes in the house, which is unusual. Usually I have diced or stewed tomatoes. I have a can of peeled San Marzanos, but I'm going to save that for when I want to make a sauce. But what I did have was grape tomatoes that were looking kind of skanky. Like, if I didn't go through these tomatoes soon, we were going to lose the tomatoes forever. So I pulled out like the best looking ones and I quartered them. Why did I quarter them? Why did I bother cutting grape tomatoes so small? Because it made them the same size, roughly, as the rest of the veggies that I'm using. So again, mouthfeel, when you put things on your fork or your spoon, how is it gonna, like, how does the whole experience translate? That's important. Garlic, however much garlic you want. I have like varying sizes of garlic pieces here. Cloves, they're called cloves. The big one is called the bulb. Bulb, cloves. So I have like 3 kind of big ones and a small one. I don't know. I kind of put 4 cloves of garlic into like everything, and nobody's ever asked for their money back, so that's how I cook. The kind of onion that we're using, use the kind of onion you like. I use Spanish onions. Spanish onions, they're good for everything. They're super sweet. They're not obnoxiously oniony. Beans, because that's half the recipe. These are cannellini beans, white beans. I actually don't love white beans. That's probably why I have this in the house. Usually when I make this dish, I substitute chickpeas because I like that better. Or you do like half and half. I think, see, now we're getting somewhere. I don't have diced tomatoes in the house and I don't have chickpeas in the house. It sounds like I went through all of that the last time I made this, and that's why I have kind of funny ingredients around. So I'm using cannellini beans. Use the beans you like. I don't think like black beans would be great in this, and I think red beans are kind of gross. But like, it's your journey, it's your soup journey, so that's on you. So beans, pasta. Okay, I happen to have orzo in the house that's open, and so I'm using orzo today. Use any pasta you want. The soup works better the smaller the pasta is. Again, we're looking for everything to be roughly the same size when it's on your spoon because it makes for a more enjoyable eating experience. And so I'm using orzo. Ditalini works great for this. Any kind of tiny pasta. Hell, alphabet noodles, if that's what you have, like that would be perfect in this. And I don't think this is a particularly kid-friendly dish because they're going to look at the beans and be like, what's happening? But like, I don't know, I've been wrong before. Maybe I'm wrong about that. But alphabet noodles, everybody likes. Tomato paste, I like have tomato paste in the house. So we're using it. We're not using a can of diced or stewed tomatoes, and so I wanted something tomatoey other than my diced up grape tomatoes, so we're using tomato paste, because, like, why the hell not? You only live once. Rosemary usually does go in this dish. I have a bunch of terrific rosemary. Rosemary smells amazing. It's like walking through pine trees. I feel so Robert Frost right now. Yeah, it's a very piney, woodsy, super aromatic herb. My father hates rosemary, or he says he hates rosemary, and then I like put it into dishes and he's like, "Why does this taste so good?" And I'm like, "I don't know, because it's made with love." No, it's not. I mean, it is made with love, but like also it's made with rosemary. That's why it tastes good. I would put thyme in here. I don't have any fresh thyme in the house, but what I do have is parsley, flat leaf Italian parsley. I don't use parsley in like anything, and so whenever I buy it, I always have kind of a lot left over. This is a great thing to like throw some parsley in it. And since I don't have fresh thyme, but I do have fresh oregano, here's the thing, it wasn't labeled. I think it's fresh oregano. It smells like oregano, it looks like oregano. Is it like maybe marijuana? I don't think this is what marijuana looks like. I'm not exactly like the foremost expert, but like maybe we're cooking cannabis in quarantine. We don't know, but I think it's actually oregano. Lemony kind of flavor. Oh, chicken stock. Later on, some other time, I'm going to teach everybody how to make chicken stock because I believe it's super duper important to not only always have chicken stock in the house because it's endlessly useful, but I think that making your own, it tastes so much better than store-bought. Like, the difference is unbelievable, and it's not that hard to make. So, like, it's exhausting to make, but if you're cooking anyway, like, spend a Sunday, make your own stock, and it keeps in the freezer for 6 months. Like, just do it. Just do it. Just make a little stock. We're getting crazy in quarantine. So I have, like, a lot of chicken stock. I have, like, this much, but then I also have, like, this much. Shout out to Lauren Cohen, who is keeping, oh no, I just poured a bunch of chicken stock down the drain, which is like a horror show, and I've never pumped breast milk, and so I've never spilled breast milk, I just pump, but I'd imagine this feels very similarly because I put like a very long amount of heart and soul and time into making my chicken stock, and I just spilled a bunch of it because the cap wasn't on great. Anyway, shout out to Lauren Cohen for keeping this in her freezer for us. Here's another full one, and like there's some ice in it even. Like, who cares? It's quarantine time. I can't believe I just spilled so much stock down the drain. That fucking sucks. But you know what? Like, life is weird right now, right? That's a tough one. That's a hard blow. Okay, and finally, if you're like the kind of crazy person that keeps rinds of cheese in the house, this is a great soup to be able to put that into because it's good with cheese anyway. Not a kosher dish. We're using pork, but also we're mixing meat and milk. So like, make it vegetarian and then, then you won't have these problems. So let's play a new game, which is, what's that smell? I don't know what kind of cheese leftovers I have in the house, so let's do a little bit of like cheese archaeology together. We have this rind, which actually smells really good and nutty. I wonder if it says anything on it. It has no distinguishing marks. So if this were like Antiques Roadshow, this would be very hard to assess because it doesn't have like a maker's mark on it. I will say that this, like, it smells like Gouda. Let's take a taste. It doesn't taste like Gouda. It tastes super sharp and super nutty, but it's more yellow than like a Pecorino Romano or a Parmigiano Reggiano or a Locatelli. It's much more yellow than that. Okay, so we're gonna file this one under not sure yet. It's good, so like maybe we'll use it, but we can't identify it. This cheese, this is absolutely like not, a Parmesan. Yeah, this doesn't even smell. This actually smells like a goat cheese, which is not something that I want to be using. So let's put that one away. And then we have, okay, so this does have some maker's marks on it. This is a Grana Padano, which is, Grana Padano is super fun. Grana Padano, it's a great drag queen name. I don't know if that's taken, but like, please someone call yourself Grana Padano. Okay, so now let's compare mystery cheese versus Grana Padano, and see which one we want to use in the dish. What I'm going for is something that's salty, to kind of counteract all of the fattier flavors. Anytime you use something with a lot of fat, you want to add salt content to it to kind of balance it out. That's why French cooking tastes so fucking good, because they're like, let's do a bunch of cheese and a bunch of, that's not a French accent, let's do a bunch of cheese and a bunch of salt and put it all together. And people are like, well, thank you for teaching everyone how to eat. The Grana Padano is really good, and it has a mellower flavor than this mystery cheese, which I think is probably Pecorino. So we're going to use the mellower one. So I'm putting these cheeses away. So thanks everyone for playing What's That Smell? And so I think we're about ready to get started with the actual cooking. Okay, babies, it's soup time. Or rather, hello all you cool cats and kittens. Cats and kittens? That's hard to say. I don't know how Carol Baskin killed her husband, fed him to tigers, and was able to get out, hey all you cool cat. I can't even do it once. So obviously she's maybe not the villain of that show, which is amazing because I truly believe she killed her husband. But she's obviously more talented than me because she can speak. So we have a different Le Creuset today. Le Creuset. This is an oval-shaped one. Does the shape matter? I don't know. I think it distributes heat differently, but I can't explain to you like how or why. So that's something that you can ask your local Le Creuset vendor. If you're going to Woodbury Commons, ask for Sarah. There are 4 Sarahs who work there, but one of them is the Sarah that I like. And which one is she? You'll have to figure it out. But so go talk to your Sarah Le Creuset and ask what the difference is between all of these Dutch ovens. So I have like a medium-ish heat going. And the first thing that we're going to do is take this kind of crazy sausage that we don't know what to do with and throw it into the pot. Now, I don't know how quickly this will cook. I don't know how much fat is in it. Sorry, before we do this, see, this is what happens when you have a recipe written down and it's just like in your mindscape. We're going to add a little olive oil to the pan. How much? I don't know. That looks like about a tablespoon. Let's call it a tablespoon. I'll try to come up with measurements as we go so that, you know, somebody could eventually replicate this, but like no promises. Okay, so we're gonna get our oil just a little heated. We don't want to burn the hell out of anything. Soups are a very low and slow kind of process. So let's toss in the meat, and I'm so afraid of burning this. I'm gonna throw it in a little early just so that it like comes up to temperature with the oil instead of like tossing it in and it's already hot and we don't know what to do. So when in doubt, okay, that's a nice sound. Those are good cooking sounds. We have our little rubber scraper spatula tool, which by the way, my mother would like you to know, this was actually her discovery and her recommendation. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit because it's already starting to brown. Now, if you're using a very high fat protein here, like a bacon, like a pancetta, I suppose you could use prosciutto or something, but like I don't think that this is the greatest use case for that. Anyway, you're going to want to keep an eye on everything. You don't want it to burn. And remember, it's going to be in here a really long time because it's going to cook with the rest of the stuff that we've cut up. So first of all, if it looks like it's already burning, just pluck it out and you'll add it back in at the end. The idea is that we just want to get the fats mixing. So 2 fats are better than 1. We're using olive oil fat, and then we're also using this this like terrific crazy Thai sausage fat. You're trying to draw the fats out so that we're able to saute with the 2 fats that we're using. So this is starting to get brown. I will show you. Actually, it's starting to pop in a way that's getting a little dangerous. Let's lower the heat. So this is starting to get brown. We're starting to get these kind of brown bits in the pan. So I think it's now time to add all of our mirepoix. All the mirepoix, dumping it right in. So first of all, it's going to cool off the pan. And it'll make everything cool a little bit slower. There we go. It's starting to get a little quieter. I think I just lost a couple pieces out the back of the pan. Shit happens. There we go. So, and see how the meat, again, it's the same size as the mirepoix. Don't let anybody tell you different. Size matters, okay? So make sure we're at least getting uniform chops, or as uniform as you can do. Don't make yourself crazy. This is only soup, for God's sake. But like, make it easy on yourself. In the end, you're gonna want it to cook at the same speed. I have red pepper flakes, which I don't actually think would be so great in this. No, I have like all kinds of strange things. Shout out, this is for my in-laws. This is like a bunch of different kinds of really good salt. Yeah, I don't know who moved my black pepper. I feel like there's going to be hell to pay for having moved my black pepper. But anyway, let's get some salt going in there. We're going to add salt in like a few different stages, keeping in mind that the sausage is salty and the chicken stock, since we made it ourselves, we know how much salt is in there. And it's like not a little bit. It's super flavorful. So don't over salt the thing. Don't over salt the thing. So what we're looking for again is not to have the veggies getting browned, but to have the veggies getting soft. And once the veggies start to soften a bit and turn more translucent, that's when we're going to be ready to start adding kind of all the other goodies into this dish. So while this cooks down, it's looking pretty good. While this cooks down, we're going to add tomato paste. Tomato paste is one of those ingredients that you want to add on the early side, because tomato paste you do want to get browned. It tastes so much richer that way. It's just a yummier flavor. It tastes like kind of less processed, less canned. It actually, when you brown it, it tastes like maybe you let your tomatoes sit out in the sun and then, I don't know, smush them. How much am I adding? I don't know. This looks like about 2 tablespoons of, This looks like about 2 tablespoons of tomato paste. We're adding it into the pot, straight in. There's actually a word for when you brown tomato paste. It's a French word because, like, obviously, pinçage, I think, is the word for it. Don't quote me on that, but, like, maybe quote me on that if I'm right, because that would be kind of impressive. We're going to turn the heat up just a little bit. I cook a lot by sound, which I think is probably unusual, but I can tell a lot by what's going on in the pot by what it sounds like. And so if it sounds crazy, that's probably not a good thing, and you want to lower the heat. So, like, I know the idea of listening to music while you cook feels like super Anthony Bourdain, but, like, I don't know, it's not my process. It doesn't work for me. So Here's what it looks like to have the tomato paste getting all stirred in and yummy. It's not brown yet because we just put it in, but that's fine because it gives me a chance to wash all of this tomato paste off of my hands. So far today, I've dumped a bunch of soup down the drain accidentally and gotten tomato paste all over me. I think this is, you guys, I think this might win an Emmy. Like, I think. Okay, so next on the list, let's add in our garlic. Garlic is an ingredient that, like, it tastes a lot of different ways. What I mean by that is garlic can be pungent and kind of sharp flavored. Garlic can be sweet if you roast it. Garlic can be super bitter if you accidentally burn it. So first of all, that's why we're adding it a little bit later in the soup instead of putting it with our mirepoix. But second of all, the way that we're going to prepare the garlic today, I show you. We're going to peel it. Nice and peeled. And then we're just going to smush it. Here's what I mean by smush. You're going to take the heel of your knife. Be careful not to slaughter your whole family. And I mean, it kind of broke it up. Again, this is a soup and you don't want to like accidentally get a mouthful of garlic. So this is one of those things that like when we see it floating around later, we might pick it out. But it's good to have as part of the aromatics that are going in. And again, like I love garlic. I think that you measure garlic like with your heart and soul and not by, there we go. That's like a better shmush. See our shmush of garlic? There you go. So I'm putting in like, we'll call this 3½ cloves because one of them is small. First you take the garlic and you smush it. You smush it. You smush it, smush it, smush it. Okay. There. Sometimes these little garlic cloves are like motherfuckers to peel, and I wish I had a life hack for that, but I don't. So it's just one of those things that makes life exciting. Okay, so we've added our garlic in. I'll show you. Look, everything's taking on like a more, not brown color, although we do have a bit of like brown areas from the sausage, but everything's turning a kind of like, let's call it burnt sienna if we're using Crayola as our guide. We're now going to add the beans. I have 2 cans of beans here. If you have 1 enormous can of beans, like use that one. The important thing about cooking with canned beans is that you rinse them before you throw them in. Or you're gonna like fart your family into oblivion. You'll actually be able to see the bubbles coming out of the beans as you wash them. So I will show you that. I will show you that like if I can. Also, look at how beans get stuck like in the bottom of the can. Worst, right? So just run a little bit of water in there because we're rinsing them anyway. And get them out of the bottom of your can. And you'll see the beans get like so, I probably just spilled bean juice, it's fine. The beans get really bubbly. I'll show you if I can. Let's see if I can do this. We're really making movies now, folks. Okay. This is what beans look like as you wash them. See how totally and completely bubbly that is? It almost looks like you mixed it with soap. So that would have been in your little tummy tum if we weren't washing it out. And, you know, what goes in must come out, right? So make sure you wash your goddamn beans because truly, like, quarantine is bad enough when people aren't having digestive issues. And that's all I have to say about that. Okay, so we're adding our 2 cans of beans, going right in. And there's apparently like a lot of old wives' tales about like cooking beans or not cooking beans and how to cook them so that they're not hard or something. I think that has to do with dried beans, not canned beans. So like, I don't know if there's conventional wisdom around cooking with canned beans. Again, like, it's not something that I know, and so it's not something that that I've ever like knowingly messed up before. All my recipes have come out good, even though I'm using canned beans right into the pot. So make of that what you will. We're just kind of letting all of these ingredients get together now. We're not messing with it. We're not playing with it. We're not even seasoning it. We're just kind of letting them get to know each other. We're introducing the ingredients to each other. While we do that, let's set up our herbs. Remember, we're using rosemary. I think we'll use like 1 to 3 sprigs of rosemary, a bunch of oregano because we had it in the house, a bunch of parsley because we had it in the house, and maybe I will add a little bit of dried thyme, but I haven't decided yet. So like, we're gonna decide together. Okay, so we have a bunch of herbs going on here. You know what, we're also gonna, I just decided, we're gonna use some bay leaf as well. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I think bay leaf tastes good in everything. Whenever you want to get something feeling like rich and delicious and homey and have depth of flavor, like, get your bay. Just get your bay on the line. Let's throw in, like, you want them to be easy to fish out later. You don't want to eat bay leaves. They smell amazing. They taste like crap. Let's get 2 little ones. Little ones. Throw it right into the pot. Is that too much? Is that too little? I don't know. We're making this up as we go along. We're going to get, I think, 2 sprigs of rosemary will be fine. Again, throw it right in whole. We don't have to do anything with it because we're going to pick it out later. Just start stirring it around so you could smell it working. Fresh oregano is not like dried oregano. Fresh oregano is super pungent. So like, you know, a dab will do ya. I think we're gonna do like this little halfsy sprig, just like throw it right in. And then, I don't know, like, I never use parsley, so I don't even like know what to do with parsley. Let's take, well, it's a mellow flavor. Let's take a little bit more than that. But again, I want to be able to identify it and pull it out when I'm done. Pull out. I want to be able to identify it and pull it out when I'm done cooking it. So let's throw in 3 sprigs whole. This is what that looks like. I think we just lost a little more carrot to the cause. It happens. You know, we're not professional cooks here. We just like to cook. It's a whole different thing. Okay, I think we're about ready to add our stock. So, how much stock are we adding? These are great questions. Half my stock, I'm spilling it everywhere, half my stock is kind of frozen. So I can't even tell you in cups. And we're also looking for it to cook down, but I will do my best to estimate. I believe this is like a 5.5 quart Le Creuset pot, like give or take, and probably take. So let's say we're adding easily 2 quarts of chicken stock to this, like for sure 2 quarts. If you want to add more, add more. That's kind of like the name of the game here. I'm going to show you what this looks like so far. See how I have these 2 giant ice cubes floating in here? Like by the time they melt, and they're going to melt quickly, by the time they melt into this dish, and let's turn up the heat a little so that they do melt, because now we want to start getting a boil going. Like this will probably be, I think this is about 2 quarts of soup. That's what we're calling it. If you want to throw in more, throw in more. If you want to make less, cool. The ratio of vegetables to food doesn't totally, vegetables to soup doesn't really change based on how much soup you're making. It's just kind of a like do what you like sort of experience. So we're going to stir this and have it come to a boil. So stir it up so that all the flavors get happy together. Cover it up and let it come to a boil, and we'll get back together once it's boiling. So it's been about 10 minutes, and the soup is not yet boiling, but it's getting there. It's starting to smoke a bit. It's starting to make kind of little bubbles going, and I added probably another like pint or so of liquid to it. I thought it was looking a little skimpy, so I added some more stock. If yours is looking a little skimpy and you don't have any more stock, throw a little water in. That's what they used to do in the old country. Just add some water to the soup. So before it starts boiling again, I want to add 2 more ingredients before we add in our pasta. The first is the cheese that we were talking about. This doesn't even have to cook down all the way, but let's get it in early so that it starts kind of thickening the soup. You're not looking for the cheese to be like melty as if you're making a queso. You're just looking for the cheese to act as a thickening agent to the soup. So I'll show you. We're just kind of mixing it around and then like letting it do its thing. Like it lives there now. We don't have to worry about it. And then we're also going to throw those tomatoes that we had diced in. I didn't want to do it too early because they're super liquidy and I didn't want them to get like really mushy. If we had started cooking them with the mirepoix, they would have been not recognizable as tomatoes anymore by the time we got to this point in the cooking. So, like, throw them in late if you want your veggies to actually taste like they're each individual vegetable you're using. If you're looking to use like trickery and deceit in your cooking, I guess you could put it in early. You would have put it in. Yeah, like around the same time you put in the tomato paste, and you would call it like, hey, that's how I made my own version of stewed tomatoes, because we're just improvising and making this up as we go along. So this is looking good. Let's talk a little bit about pasta. So we're going to be cooking the pasta directly in the soup. You know how when you make pasta in water, everybody after you turn 30 anyway, talks about saving some of the pasta water for the dish that you're making. The reason that you do that is because that pasta water has starch in it, has flavor from the pasta in it, and actually has the gluten from the pasta in it. So it's part of what thickens the dish and makes it taste a little, or make it texture a little creamy. So with all of that in mind, when we cook pasta directly in the soup that we're cooking, it also acts as a thickening agent, just like the cheese does, because all of the starch and all of the gluten that's in the pasta is going to be making its way into the soup. This also means that when you go to reheat the soup the next day, you're going to have to add water to it, because it's going to get a little, all the gluten will develop, and so it's going to get kind of gelatinous overnight, and really start sticking together. Throw a little water in before you pop it in the microwave or back onto the stove, and it'll cook up just like regular soup, but it will be thick in the beginning. We like a thick soup, that bitch thick. So we now have a pretty furious rolling boil going on our soup, and so we're going to pour in, like, I don't know, roughly a cup of whatever pasta, moves you and makes your heart happy. Just a little extra because it's end of days and we're celebrating health and wellness by eating as many carbohydrates as humanly possible. So we're now not going to cover the soup. That soup was covered for 10 minutes in order to get to where it was, to nearly boiling, and I stirred it like probably 2 or 3 times while it was covered. We're not going to cover the soup anymore because we're cooking pasta in it. If we were to cover it, the whole thing would kind of boil up and boil over, again, because of the starch in the pasta and probably a lot of other scientific reasons, but like if you want that kind of information, Alton Brown exists. We just saw a piece of that cheese go by. So just cooking down all the stuff. We're gonna let the pasta cook. Orzo takes like kind of a weirdly long amount of time in order to get cooked properly. Let's turn the flame down a little bit on this just to make it not so frantic a bubble, especially since we're cooking this uncovered. We don't want to have to, well, I mean, I have to clean my stove anyway because I cooked brisket on this bad boy like 2 days ago, and that was a lot. I've also been I made so much jam. Okay, I had never made jam before in my entire life, and I had to order a certain amount of plums and strawberries when I placed my grocery order with Baldor, because you had to, not only did you have to buy over $250 worth of groceries in order to get them to do a home delivery, but since they're a catering company turned home delivery company, they only had enormous quantities of things. And so I wound up with 8 pints of strawberries and many pounds of plums, like there were easily 40 plums there. It was probably more like 50. And I was like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do with all of this produce? So I had never made jam before. I looked up some recipes for jam on the internet. I thought that you needed like a candy thermometer and all these things and make it in a lot of stages. Apparently there's some super easy recipes for jam out there. But so anyway, I wound up making strawberry jam and plum jam with like a little bit of strawberry thrown in for like pectin reasons. And so there's that kind of splattered all over my stove also. And so I've just been avoiding cleaning my stovetop, and I feel like if I just keep cooking, maybe I'll never have to clean it. We'll see how that goes. Okay, so this soup is starting to smell really delicious, actually, and let me show you how everything's coming together. Look at that, super hearty soup. This is really, really good for like fall and winter time. All of those flavors really lend themselves to it, and all of the ingredients are still pretty much in season when you're making this in the fall and the winter. And like, soup is just good in the fall and winter anyway. I like soup year round, and again, this is one of those things that like, hey, we don't know what to do with all of the produce that we have in the house and with all the pasta and beans that we bought in a panic because we knew that they wouldn't go bad. So that's why we're cooking this. But also, like, we need comfort food right now, right? We want things that are like hearty and heartwarming and give you like that good warm soup tummy feeling. So we're going to continue to cook this uncovered until the pasta is tender but not all the way cooked. It's called al dente, which literally translates to the teeth or to the tooth. So you want it to still have a little bit of bite, because we are going to let this soup set up when it comes off the heat. We're going to leave it on the counter and let it like be soup. And part of that means that the pasta is going to continue to cook a little bit. So if we cook it too far, the pasta will get mushy. And like, not that that's necessarily such a bad thing. You haven't messed up the dish if your pasta is mushy. Again, this is super duper peasant food. These are cheap ingredients. These are not fancy ingredients. So, you know, it's fine if that happens. But like, again, first of all, I like crunchy vegetables in my soup, and I like pasta that you can actually taste. So, just like for mouthfeel purposes. So I'm only going to cook it al dente. You do what's in your heart, or however it winds up kind of timing itself out. It's also, this recipe doesn't take all that long to do. I'm making it in sort of large quantity, and so it takes a little longer. I'm also of the belief that like, if you're cooking anyway and you're getting your apartment hot anyway, like, just make a lot of it, because it's not physically harder to make, you know, 3 quarts of soup than it is to make 2 bowls of soup. So why not make more? And I grew up cooking that way. Every Sunday, my mother would cook kind of for the week because both of my parents worked. And then as I got older, we wound up making meals for my grandparents. And so we were cooking in enormous quantities. And for the longest time, I only knew how to roast like 10 pieces of chicken at a time and make soup in enormous quantities. And, you know, everything was big. It was 30 meatballs. It was, you know, that kind of cooking. And slowly I have learned how to cook in smaller portions, but I found that, you know, when cooking for the week, you still need to be able to cook a lot of food at once. And it's not more physically difficult. It takes some more time to cook, But, you know, you're still chopping, you're still washing, if you're going to wash a pot, make it a big pot and get it done with, and then you get a lot of food out of it. And so how much will this soup yield? This is probably at least 6 bowls of soup. It depends on your bowls. So this is funny. When I got married, I registered for, is it that I registered for it? Yes, okay, here's the story. So here's the story. I registered for a bunch of dishes through Bloomingdale's because that's what all the hip were doing on the Upper East Side. I registered for all of our dishware through Bloomingdale's, all this really interestingly shaped Diane von Furstenberg dishware. It was so cool. It immediately sold out, and I wasn't able to get any of it and had to re-register. I re-registered a second time because really the only dishes that I wanted were Rosenthal dishes, but then I did some research on the Rosenthal brand, and they had made like commemorative plates for Hitler and things like that. And like, I'll buy German products. I'm not one of those Jews who just doesn't buy German, but like, I'd prefer the company to be post-war if I'm going to buy, or do something like have been part of some kind of like Jew-saving effort, but like, I guess that's a lot to ask. Anyway, so I didn't want to buy Rosenthal dishes, and so I searched and searched, and the only thing that was important to me when buying my dishes was, first of all, the weight. I wanted things to be kind of heavy, because then you don't accidentally break them while you wash them, and you can abuse the hell out of them. I wanted them to be white because I personally think food looks best on a white plate. The eye eats first, as they say, and so I think food, kind of like how you make art on a white canvas, I think food looks best on a white plate. But I also wanted the bowls to be ridiculously big. So soup, cereal, what have you, these are my bowls. They're huge, like huge, they're huge bowls. And like to a comical degree that like if this was your bowl of soup, you've definitely eaten 2 bowls of soup. So when I tell you that this recipe yields like 6 bowls of soup, I'm sort of talking out my ass because like they yield 6 of my bowls of soup. How many of your bowls will it be? Like, I don't know, 10, 50? Like, I don't know what your soup looks like or your dishware. Okay, so we're going to start tasting our pasta now. It's just a little harder than I'd like it to be. So we're going to let it cook a little more. Make sure when you're stirring your soup, here I'll give you another look at what this is looking like. Make sure when you're stirring your soup, you're always kind of scraping the bottom of the pan, the pot, so that first of all, nothing gets stuck to the bottom and becomes mushy, but second of all, nothing starts burning, because that's of course the hottest point of your pot. See, look at how yummy. And the colors are great in this soup, aren't they? It's like a pretty kind of almost paprika color with these fantastic reds and greens. Oh, there was our, where did that go? That was our cheese. I don't know where it went now. See, in such a tiny pot, you can still kind of lose yourself. See, there's the cheese. It's getting kind of cooked down and melty and delicious. Let me switch to a proper spoon, and then I'll really be able to show you what we're working with. So see all these twigs and stuff of the herbs that we left in? We'll be able to pluck them out now, or not now, but when the soup is done. And that way, when you go to reheat and you go to eat your soup, you're not like picking around it. It's just something that we can pluck out before we go to store it. So at this point, once your pasta starts getting kind of close, you do want to check it often. Probably a professional chef doesn't have to do that because they can like eyeball it or they like sense it in their soul. I can't do that. I'm not a professional chef, so I have to taste things constantly. But like, good, taste your food while you're cooking it. That way you'll also be able to season it correctly. That's getting pretty close. Since we're talking about tasting our food, I feel that this needs certainly pepper. We never added pepper to it. I like to add pepper at the end because it's a flavor that, I don't know, I think it kind of mixes in really easily, so you add it at the end. So I'm adding some pepper. This is a peppercorn grinder. I think fresh cracked black pepper tastes way better than the powdered stuff. Like way, way better. Like better enough that I won't buy the powdered stuff anymore because the flavor, it's such a huge difference. I understand that makes it harder to measure, but I also think that black pepper usually calls for such small amounts that, like, so what if you can't measure it correctly? So we're putting a bunch of black pepper in here. I would say that's about a half a teaspoon that I put in if you're playing the powder game at home. I also feel that this needs a little salt. Again, that makes sense, remember, because we added cheese to the soup. So I had tasted it before the cheese was added in, and it was actually seasoned pretty well, but now with the addition of the cheese, even though the cheese that we're putting in is kind of salty, it's also super creamy, super rich. We added dairy to a dish, so now we have to add salt. The salt, I'm probably adding a teaspoon of salt, let's call that. Kosher salt, I cook almost exclusively with kosher salt. It's a much more mild flavor than the really tiny iodinized table salt, and it's less expensive than sea salt. Sea salt also has truly its own flavor. Sea salt tastes like wherever it came from, the sea. And I find kosher salt really just pops whatever you put it in. So, okay, let's try this again because I believe this soup is almost done. So let's take a real spoon, see what we're working with, get a little bit of the broth on there so that we can test for flavor and seasoning. This is very hot. Don't burn your tongue. That's a good soup. That's a really good soup. What do you do if you overdo it on the salt in a soup? There's a couple of solutions for that. 3 different things, to my knowledge, counteract salt. And feel free to leave a comment letting me know if I'm missing any. But 3 things, to my knowledge, counteract salt. One is lemon, one is wine, and one is vinegar. And so what do all those things have in common? They're all acids. So if I were to have oversalted this soup, I would probably have added just a little bit of white wine to it. White wine is really good in these kind of Italian soups. Italian wedding soup has a bunch of white wine in it, and it's delicious. That's the other thing. If you want to throw some greens onto this, knock yourself out. Kale, baby spinach, Swiss chard, whatever you got that you have to get rid of, toss it in at the end, like when you take it off the heat. Because you're not looking to cook the greens, you're just looking to wilt the greens. Anyway, so I would have added white wine to it. I actually think because this is such a tomato-heavy dish and such a bean-heavy dish, balsamic vinegar would go really well with it. And so if you do an oops with the salt, like, experiment a little bit. If you know that vinegar works, think about the ethnicity of food that you're cooking. So this is Italian, and so think, what would an Italian do for vinegar? So if this were more of an Asian dish that I was making, maybe I would use a rice wine vinegar. I made some knockout cold noodles and sesame sauce last night. It took like 7 minutes. It was amazing. So maybe I'll make that again later. Maybe I'll show you. I don't know. It was kind of, most of it is just cooking pasta, so it's not that interesting because you're like watching water boil, but we'll get there. Okay, so we're ready to take the soup off the heat. So I'm going to put out my trivet onto the counter, and I'll meet you at the counter. Okay, here we are. We've moved our dish onto a trivet onto the counter. Remember, it is very, very hot. You need to use oven mitts. This is my favorite oven mitt ever. It says this is fucking delicious on it. I got this at a little shop in Jackson Heights called Lockwood. I believe there's also a Lockwood in Astoria. It's a fabulous little neighborhood shop. So, you know, support local business. I don't even know if they're open right now because like the whole world is closed because of the Rona, but when they open back up, I'll be getting little gifts. I love getting gifts there. If you're a friend of mine and I've gotten you a gift and it was like adorable and a little snarky, that's where it was from. Okay, so our soup is cooked. So we need to just do a couple of things to finish it. First of all, let's start picking out all of the little seasonings that we said we didn't want to have twigs roaming around in our soup. So just take a paper towel, throw it next to the soup, take some combination of like a spoon and spatula, and while your soup sets up, just start picking out, and remember it's very hot, pick out all these things that you wouldn't want to accidentally happen upon while you're cooking. Here, this is some real home cooking stuff. I don't know if you can see this, you probably can't. This is a piece of my hair that I just picked out of the soup. So anything like that, you know, personal grooming issues, twigs, no stems, no seeds, no hair. I get that from my mother. My mother, there was just always a piece of her hair in the food, but she has like really epic mermaid hair like my sister does. I do not, so I don't know what my excuse is, but I'll say it's genetic, because whenever you don't have an excuse for something, you say it's genetic. You're taking out bay leaves, you're taking out parsley stems, you're taking out the rosemary stems will be a little harder to find because the rosemary pieces will have fallen off. So here's what a rosemary stem looks like when it's naked. Oh, already really good. Couple more stems. Also, those humongous pieces of garlic that we had just smashed and put in, pluck those suckers out. You don't want a mouthful of that. Yoink. And our giant piece of cheese. Let's find that. Because it's no longer a giant piece of cheese. It's now like it might now just be soup, you guys. Maybe that's why this soup is, oh, here it is. I'll show you. See that piece of cheese? It's now basically all rind, which is wonderful. That means that the rest of the really yummy cheesy goodness is in the soup, making it thick with two C's. Okay, let's kind of like wring out our cheese before we plop it out. There we go. And a couple more pieces of garlic were in here. Show you what it looks like now. Ah, see, one more bay leaf. Seek and ye shall find. It ain't over until you catch all the bay leaves. Try to count the amount of bay leaves that you put into a dish, because it's not one of those things that you want to leave in there, particularly if you're not eating everything in one sitting. If the bay sits overnight in your soup, it's just gonna become more and more flavorful, and the whole thing is gonna be like a bay fest. Bay watch is what we'll call that. Okay, so now I would say this soup is cooked. It's thickening up really beautifully. It's super hearty. I would just leave it and let it cool and serve it pretty immediately. If you want to shred a little bit of fresh cheese over it before you eat it, knock yourself out, that's awesome. If you want to put a little fresh, really good extra virgin olive oil into it before you eat it, that would taste awesome too. Let's take a little taste, a little tasty taste. The tomatoes are super sweet and bright. The pasta is like this perfect counterbalance to that. The beans have that really good earthiness, which goes really, really well with this like strange little sausage that we put into it. And the herbs are so rustic and piney, and it's just really a beautiful, like, let's pretend it's fall and get cozy dish. So thank you very much for viewing today, and let me know if there's anything else you'd like to see me cook. This is Cooking from Quarantine. Thank you. Bye-bye.